I'd like to call this regular meeting of the Parks, Rec, and Trails Commission to order. Margarita, would you please call the roll?
Yes. Commission Chair Marty Rosen.
Present.
Commission Vice Chair Bill Zimmerman.
Here.
Commissioner Ken Gaunt.
Here.
Commissioner Richard Croy.
Here.
And Commissioner Tom Gidroyce.
Here.
Thank you. Ken, would you please help us with the flag salute?
I will do so. Again? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Ken. Are there any modifications to the agenda? Margarita?
No, none.
Okay. So the agenda is approved as is. There are no presentations. Are there any public comments from all of the people out here?
We have none.
Okay. Approval of the meeting minutes of September 18. Are there any modifications?
I don't have any.
Hearing none, I would ask for a motion to approve the minutes as is.
So move.
I'll second.
Bill Zimmerman seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The minutes are approved. We now go to public hearing 8.1, parkland dedication and development fees. Robert, is that going to be you?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rosen. I'll provide a brief overview of what the ordinance's implications are, as well as explanation of what both actions by this commission will mean ultimately. Prior to going into that, though, I do want to recognize the attendance of our interim community development director, Charles LeClaire, who's also on hand to answer any questions relative to this item and this public hearing as they relate to and will ultimately result in development code adoption as well once it is similarly reviewed by the Planning Commission and then City Council at a future meeting. So with that, just a quick overview of what the Quimby Act is. It is essentially a tool within government tool chest to exact a land dedication for developments that occur within the jurisdiction of that agency. Per Government Code Section 66477, it provides that the legislative body of a city may, by ordinance, require the dedication of land or impose a requirement of the payment of fees in lieu thereof, or a combination of both for park and recreational purposes as a condition of development. So it really talks directly to land dedication or payment in lieu of not actually dedicating land. And a little later on, I'll explain how that is calculated. Similarly, but on a different front, is a Mitigation Fee Act, which is sort of part two of what you're considering this evening. This refers to what's been traditionally known as development impact fees. Per Government Code Section 66000 through 66008, provides that the legislative body of a city may, by ordinance, require the improvement or construction of public facilities or impose a requirement for the payment of fees in lieu thereof, or a combination of both, for park and recreational purposes as a condition of development. So, again, the distinction is that Quimby is for land, and that mitigation is for facilities. Okay. And again, later on, I'll provide an overview of how those are calculated as well. So the current fee ordinance is actually an adoption of what Riverside County Land Use Ordinance number 460.15 includes in section 10.35, and it provides regulations pertaining to the dedication an improvement of land, or the payment of fees, or both, by developers for park and recreation purposes, and it was adopted by the city of Menifee upon incorporation. So land dedication pursuant to what the Riverside County ordinance has on the books is 3 acres per 1,000 persons, or the in lieu of approximately $2,160 all the way through $3,480 per dwelling unit. And the range essentially is a contingency of the density of the proposed development. Okay.
Can I get a quick clarification before you get too far into this,
Sure.
Robert? The 3 acres per 1,000 was what the county had at the time of our
Incorporation.
adoption, and that has changed, though, with the county, is that correct?
I don't know that for a fact. We've since the general plan within the city was completed and adopted, the city's been using the 5 per 1,000, and so I don't know that the city's necessarily looked back at what the county is utilizing, nor has the city gone back and adopted a new ordinance from the county, thus adopting the 5 per 1,000.
5 or 3?
I'm sorry, no, if the county has adopted a new ordinance, the city hasn't gone back and adopted that ordinance to become their own. So for all intents and purposes, the city is still operating under the pretenses of the 3 per 1,000, yes.
Except that the county has gone to 5.
And if they have, the city has not adopted that yet.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
And additionally, the park diff, which we'd refer to as mitigation, is assessed at approximately $536 per dwelling unit. It's a flat fee, independent of the density or the type of dwelling unit is the same across the board. So the new ordinances, and this is where I need to make some clarification. What was in your packet as backup is presented as one ordinance. We have been talking with the city attorney about the ordinance, and their recommendation is to make it 2 independent ones, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But for the new ordinances, the changes obviously increases the land dedication requirement from 3 to 5 acres per 1,000. It increases the in lieu payment fee per dwelling unit proportional to the fair market land acquisition cost per acre, and you'll see that in the calculation in a future slide here. And then on the mitigation portion, the change increases the fee per dwelling unit proportional to the park improvement cost per acre, and that's part of what the city's consultant, who's currently doing a diff study right now to determine what the cost per developed acre will be for a park. In essence, there would no longer be a flat fee as it was with the county. It would be contingent upon what the cost per acre to develop would be. So the changes that I was mentioning, essentially the city attorney is recommending a separation of the two into 2 separate ordinances and 2 separate chapters of the municipal code, and that Quimby may apply to new subdivisions only, while mitigation may apply. The reason why is that Quimby may apply to new subdivisions only, while mitigation may apply to subdivisions and other developments as well. So there's a reason for the distinction. It can be contested, and some other agencies within California, as well as other states, have had some challenges from developers because those agencies had them combined in some way or fashion. So with that, though, here is the revised title for the Quimby ordinance. And I'll read this quickly. Ordinance number 2014-16, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Menifee, California, repealing Section 10.35 of Riverside County Land Use Ordinance number 460.152 as adopted by City of Menifee, and amending the Menifee Municipal Code by adding Chapter 9.55 to require the dedication of land or the payment of fees in lieu thereof, or combination of both, for park and recreational purposes as a condition of approval for residential development projects requiring a tentative map or parcel map pursuant to the Quimby Act. Now, similarly, on the other front, ordinance number 2014-161, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Menifee, California, amending the Menifee Municipal Code by adding Chapter 9.56 to require the dedication of land or the payment of fees in lieu thereof, or combination of both, for park and recreational purposes as a condition of approval for residential development projects not requiring a tentative map or parcel map pursuant to Mitigation Fee Act.
May I interject for just a second here?
Sure.
I have a question. Who makes the distinction? Payment of fees or dedication of land?
The developer and the city cooperatively work through that, and typically that's part of the next piece of, or the second action of this item. That can be determined based off of a master plan. And in essence, if it's determined that there is a sufficient amount of parkland already in existence within a radius of that subdivision, that development, then they can, the city can say, well, we don't need an additional park. Instead, you can pay a fee. We have already satisfied the acreage requirement in that area.
But if the reverse were true, and there wasn't sufficient parks within that area,
Right.
and the developer preferred not to give any of its land, but wanted to give fees,
Uh-huh.
who would make that decision?
Typically, the planning commission is the first group to take up that. And Charles can correct me if I'm wrong, but on the tentative tract map, that's typically where that is discussed.
I don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves, but isn't it correct that the money, if it's used in place of land, has to be for the parks within that relative relationship to the development?
Yeah, there's a nexus area, essentially it has to be within the same zone. But again, Charles can reflect a little bit.
Please, Charles.
Correct. If you have a development by its nature or simply by the applicant's desire, that they would rather pay the fees, and your master plan says that in this area of the city, we need this kind of a park, the city can take the fee from that and purchase land in order to develop a park. And you can actually raise the amount that's needed in order to make sure that you can purchase land in sufficient area to meet the nexus for the development, so that that development is being served by that new park.
I'm only concerned that the amount of money that would be given wouldn't be sufficient by that developer to create the park as, well, to get the land and create the park at the same time.
The city has the opportunity through the adoption of these ordinances to say, regardless of whether you like it or not, you have to put a park in your development and can force the issue.
It can.
Yes, sir.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
And again, I think to your question, the calculation of what that fee would be is now within the, I guess you could say the city has the upper hand on that negotiation. I'll show you in the calculation here in just a
Please.
moment.
Yeah.
And so here it is for formula of calculating the dedication of land. This is typically how it works. If you look at A on the screen, number of dwelling units based on the proposed map times number of persons per dwelling unit times the acres per thousand, which is going to be 0.005, is going to be equal to the acres to be dedicated. So if they're not going to dedicate land, then B would be your course of action. Dwelling units times numbers of persons per unit, the acreage times land acquisition cost per acre. So when I say land acquisition cost per acre, and Charles can certainly expand upon this as well, that is based off of the fair market value of land within, if I'm not mistaken, the quadrant, what was it called?
Yeah. What was requested, what was suggested in the ordinance is per quadrant of the city.
So reality as opposed to a hypothetical number.
Correct.
Okay, that's great.
Thank you. And then lastly, on the mitigation portion of this, the formula is the dwelling units for the map times persons per dwelling unit times the acreage, or persons per acre, and then times the park improvement cost per acre will give you the total mitigation fee. So that the key here again on the park improvement cost per acre is that is a true number, not some pie in the sky or bare minimum. It is based off of, a lot of times comes out of what the park master plan can provide as well as what the diff study provides. It's a combination of both.
Yeah, I'm just concerned that we deal in reality as opposed to some, arbitrary number, because you know how expensive the land has become just recently.
Yeah.
All right, so.
It's a good question. Several cities that have ordinances like these on the books don't have that component where it allows escalation of the fee based off of real estate cost or material or construction costs or even labor. So these are good formulas to incorporate because it'll account for those things over time. So the prerequisite for park dedication and improvement, and as you saw on your folders this evening, a memo from the city attorney providing some additional background on the importance of a park master plan in adopting these ordinances. The Quimby Act does not allow a city to enforce parkland dedication or in lieu fee requirements unless legislative body has adopted a general plan, which it has, or specific plan containing policies and standards for parks and recreational facilities, and the park and recreational facilities are in accordance with definite principles and standards. And so I've underlined and italicized that portion because essentially it's pointing out that the city should identify what those facilities and define definite principles and standards are. And that's usually accomplished through a park master plan as well as park and trail development standards. So in essence, that's the importance, that's the linkage, that's the nexus between the two. What happens otherwise is if you adopt the ordinance but don't have a park master plan, a developer can come in and even though you've required them to build a park, they could essentially squabble with the city over what goes in that park. Putting in the bare minimum, the city would have a little support, little teeth to enforcing that ordinance. So it's important to have both. And so with this public hearing, the recommended actions are as such: conduct a public hearing, recommend adoption by City Council of ordinance number 2014-160 and ordinance number 2014-161, repealing Riverside County Land Use Ordinance number 460.152 and adding chapters 9.55 and 9.56 to the Menifee Municipal Code to require the dedication of land or payment of fees in lieu thereof, or a combination of both for park and recreational purposes as a condition of development pursuant to the Quimby and Mitigation Fee Acts. And then secondly, recommend that City Council consider the completion of a park master plan for the City of Menifee to provide guidelines to developers and staff for dedication and improvement of recreational public facilities when conditioned by the Quimby requirements. And I'll make sure I clarify as well, tonight the Commission is not considering the fee resolution itself. That would come afterwards. This is just setting what those formulas would be, and we'd come back at a future meeting with the actual fee schedule in a resolution.
Okay, Rick, you wanted to speak?
I just want to make sure Robert's all done. Okay. I think that this is if you could light a fire on this and send it to the City Council, it'd be great. One of the reasons is that in the latest, in the LAFCO staff report, which I got, I'd like to read it to you, which is why this is so urgent. The City of Menifee requires a minimum of 5 acres of public open space to be provided for every 1,000 residents for the city as a whole. The previous standard has been 3. Actual acres of parkland are currently estimated at 1.68 per 1,000. This ratio includes facilities on both sides of the Interstate 215, 140.37 acres combined. We're way behind the 8 ball here. We need to step up, and we need to make this happen as fast as possible.
Rick, can you clarify what you're reading?
Oh,
Yeah, it's the LAFCO Staff Report Municipal Services Review.
For incorporation of the city back in 2008?
No, this is the latest.
current.
Current
This is
one.
the current one.
Yeah, I can have somebody make copies and give it to you. But, so my feeling is that this needs to happen very quickly. I did have a question or two on the actual ordinance, and I just want to make sure that the language is correct. On page 5 of the ordinance, in section 8, and it refers to as payment. Section 8, payment, it says the fees imposed by chapter 9.55, parkland dedication or in lieu fee shall be due and payable upon the issuance of a building permit or issuance of a certificate of occupancy, whichever occurs first. But then on page 10, if we go to page 10, under date for making payment or dedication, about midway through that paragraph, it says the fees required under this chapter shall be due prior to the issuance of final occupancy of individual dwelling units. Dedication shall be made at the time. It seems like it's conflicting there. You have one that it seems like it should be happening at the beginning of a project, and another that puts those fees at the end, so I just want.
No, in 8, payment, it talks about the certificate of occupancy, which is final inspection, depending on if it's, depending on how that particular permit is being addressed. Some communities do certificates of occupancy after they've done a final inspection. Others, if it's a residence, they simply issue a certificate of occupancy. So in my opinion, they're saying the same thing, with the exception of the, at the recordation of the tract map, you need the fee to be paid then, because if they record the map, you don't have a mechanism to get the fee out of them.
Gotcha. Thanks for making that clear.
Do you mind if I jump in there real quick?
Go right ahead.
Only because I want to stay on the same topic. So if there's 100 homes in a tract, is it the 100th home's certificate of occupancy is when a park or something like that would be brought online? Is that what this is saying, or what? Clarify that.
You've got 2 issues here. One is the requirement for the fee and when the fee is required. If it's a tract map, you can require it at the point of recordation of the map, or you can enter into an agreement that allows you to pay that fee based upon criteria that's established and negotiated with the city. Usually you do have that kind of a situation because it's terribly expensive to have a full park in place before you've got your units built. So what has been done in the past, but we will improve upon in the future, is establishing an agreement that will allow for setting better criteria to say, okay, you can start your development, you can have X number of occupancies, but at this point, you cannot go any further, and we stipulate in here, you can't get inspections, you can't get issued new permits, you can't go beyond this point until your park has been initiated, until your park has been completed. Because we do have situations where we have owners of, where you have people that have bought homes, can't move into the home because we can't give them a certificate of occupancy at final inspection because of a fee issue or because of a park issue. So we've built into this ordinance a mechanism to resolve that as best as you can.
Thank you.
Anyone? Yes, Rick.
Yeah, that would be my concern, because I've seen that time and time again where they'll have it, and that mechanism for funding that park is way down the line, almost on the, like Bill said, the last house with the last lock being installed.
Well, this is the 8th city I've worked for in 33 years. And virtually every one of those cities has been in that same boat at one point or another.
That's why we ask.
We need to do better.
And this
Yeah.
ordinance will allow it.
Robert?
And I think there's good reason for this, too. We do have a development in town, I'm not going to name names, where we have conditioned park to be built, and then it's intended to be built by the final home within the first tract. However, instead of building that final home, the developers moved on to the next tract. And so they've succeeded in building additional homes and selling additional homes, but not moving on the park. And so we want to avoid that situation by doing a specific number of homes, not independent of the number of tracts within that development, so.
But then they could do the same thing. They could just not finish it.
With experience, and with other people setting those agreements that establish it, we will do a better job
Okay.
than what has been done in the past.
You know the pitfalls, and you're
Yes,
ready
sir.
to take care of it. Excellent. All right, gentlemen. What is there any other discussion? Then,
If I can add one point,
Please.
you had a question before the meeting with it that I'd like to offer up an answer to now. In regards to the master plan that is discussed in here, the master plan is advisable in order to cover the entire city. You have a requirement through the Planning Commission that they make findings relative to the general plan's goals and policies. The goals and policies of the general plan are identified in your staff report, are listed in the fashion of answering those goals and policies to illustrate how the ordinance in front of you would be consistent with those. In my ordinance in front of the Planning Commission, I happen to list the goals and policies themselves and then how they're answered. But the point is, in our open space conservation element, there are goals and policies that address the provision of park. We believe, staff believes, that by forwarding this onto the council, they will be adhering to and fulfilling the goals and policies and be consistent with the goals and policies of the general plan, assuming that it covers the entire city.
In my opinion, after having read the attorney's letter and speaking to Charles, I agree that we have to send this back to the city council for adoption. Even though they've already said no about 3 months ago, I think things have changed, and I'm sure Robert will express the things that have changed, which make it necessary that the city council approve this as quickly as possible, because we want those Quimby fees. Please.
Thank you. I understand how the two action items are related to each other. I would have preferred that they come separately, because there's things we should discuss in one category and should discuss in another. And so I guess if you want to combine them, that's your prerogative, but I would have preferred that we'd taken them separately.
I thought they were separate.
You're looking at one action item.
Please, Robert.
Yeah, you have there, within the agenda, that these are listed under one item but two separate action items. So you can as a after you conclude the public hearing, you can act on each of these independently if you'd like.
Right.
The reminder is that it is a public hearing, so after it's through the chair, you'll have to obviously open it up for discussion or for testimony from the public, then close that and conclude with discussion amongst the commissioners.
Yeah. Let me do that. I'm going to open up the public hearing at 6:31. Has anybody asked to speak?
No.
No. Does anyone wish to speak? In that case, I'm going to close the public hearing at 6:32. And we are now inside the grid. Let's discuss anything further you wish to talk about with regard to this Quimby fee.
I'd just like to ask, for the record, we talked about this briefly, why the agreement with RJM that's in front of us covers all of the parks within the city boundaries, not just those owned by the city.
That is recommended to you because you need to find consistency with the general plan. The general plan's elements deal with the entire corporate city. So you want to, with any development that happens within the city, be able to apply whatever master plan and apply whatever general plan goals and policies are appropriate for that development. So you need to have consistency between your park master plan, any fees and development requirements associated with that citywide.
Are we going to take each item separately, or and approve each item separately, or do we have to approve them, or can we approve them together?
Which of each? I'm sorry.
The two separate action
The
items.
well, as I understand, the what's on the table now is the first, which is
we're taking
your
them
recommendation for the
separately.
ordinances.
Okay, let's take them separately.
But to also add to the Commissioner's question, the development impact fee study that's going on right now, which will ultimately calculate what the improvement cost is per acre for parks, as well as justify the the 5 per 1,000 acre dedication requirement incorporates all of the city. And so in order to do that calculation, and that'll come before this body as well in the future, as well as the city council, it takes into account acreage, not just on the east side, but the west side, not just parks, but also trails, in its final valuation and assessment to justify the 5 per 1,000, so.
Yes.
Thank you. So I've read the staff report, and you're very thorough on action item number 1. We talked very clearly, and there's lots of information. You even include the ordinance. But then there's absolutely zero information about what the Parks Master Plan costs and what it's all about and what the estimate was and all that. Do we have that, Robert?
We do, and I put a copy on the table as well for you from what was presented to council on June 4th. Just to be clear, that second action item tonight is not intended to encourage the commission to recommend approval of that particular contract for that particular vendor to do this task. All it is asking for a recommendation to city council to reconsider pursuing a park master plan. And if council at that time says, yes, we'd love to do this, we will then come back to them with a similar June 4th proposal with a selection of a vendor. And obviously we'll come before this commission first to review the proposal, ensure that it's still valid, that their bids are still valid, and the commission can either weigh in on selecting that vendor and selecting all or some portion of the tasks within their proposal. It doesn't have to be all. It just depends on what we would want to achieve through that master plan process.
So we want to just send this to the city council for them to review it again and approve, to review it again.
It is within your purview. If you would like to simply say, you know what, staff, go back to city council with the original report you had on June 4th, that's entirely up to the commission. However, we are certainly leaving it open to come back to you all with the full process, meaning here are all the firms that submitted, this is who we recommend, and this is why. If you concur, then we can go back to council. It is up to you.
Please.
May I? Rick?
Okay,
Yeah, then I'll go back to you.
thank you.
Yeah, question for you also. Once this is done by whomever, the standards and the park master plan, will the standards apply to Valley-wide parks as well as other parks?
No, it would only apply to city-owned facilities.
Okay.
Yeah, Bill?
Thank you. So I'm a little bit concerned about having us recommend that we go back to the city council with the same proposal that they so recently said no to. It might aggravate them some. And to me, if I recall, and I'm going off of memory now because I didn't have this to study until just now, but I'm going off of memory, and it seemed like there was a lot of it was very complex and comprehensive, I guess, and it had a lot of meeting times. It had a lot of things, and it was expensive. It was more than $200,000, and so
220, I think.
My recommendation is just from my perspective. When you've been told no on something, if you're going to come back, you want to come back with something that's not the exact same thing. I would actually recommend that you come back with something that's a little more scaled down. I don't know if that's a huge effort to have to go back to the drawing board and come up with a whole new scope of work and maybe eliminate some of the public meetings and some of the efforts, but I'd really like to see this thing scaled down to about half the cost if we could. And I think the council would probably appreciate having you say, we're coming back, but we're not being disrespectful and coming back with the very same thing. We've actually given you a scaled down version, something that might be a little more palpable. So,
Tom?
I think that, as Robert suggested, we should go back in our motion and say, we recommend that you do make a plan, and here are several of the people who have bid on it. We would be happy to review this with them and ask them to reconsider their bids. I think that would cover it, rather than just saying, here it is again.
right, but we're going to need to change the scope. And that's,
Bill?
I guess
Oh,
that's my question is, are we creating a bunch of heartburn and are we kicking this thing down the road and gonna add a bunch of time, especially if time's of the essence?
So let me ask you a question. How often do these have to be revised once you've got one in place? Is it every 5, every 10 years? What do you do?
Park master plans typically,
Oh.
It's on.
Yeah, I
You just
wanted
gotta
to ask
get
how
right up
frequently
in there.
these master plans are revisited. Is it every 5, 10 years? How often? What do they usually cost to refresh?
so usually they're every 10 years. For a new city in particular, though, you want to be careful not to shortchange your process because you may find that you have to update it earlier than that. That said, though, what you saw in the proposal on June 4th, that larger dollar figure is completely comprehensive, covers everything. Can it be negotiated? Probably so. If I had to make a recommendation to this commission, it would be to direct staff to come back along with perhaps the selected or the preferred vendor to have them explain to you what each task is more in depth. I recall in talking with that vendor, they were open to doing that if they felt some additional comfort that the city would be still interested in using them in the near future. Their bid is good for 6 months, if I'm not mistaken, as long as we secure a bid extension notice from them. Essentially, they sign and say our prices are still good. I would, while I understand what Commissioner Zimmerman is mentioning, I also would just caution cutting it in half may shortchange the city on the front end. I certainly think we can probably pare down a bit here and there. I just wouldn't want to pay an update price for something that is the first time. So just, there's some balance there, I think.
Understood.
Okay, Charles?
I apologize if this is out of place for this discussion. My understanding is one of your alternatives is to simply forward a recommendation to the council that is as simple as, we recommend to you that you direct staff to bring back to us a plan, a Parks and Rec proposal, and that the council can decide, pare it down, give us anything. Why I would suggest that is so that it is simple as possible, so that you don't offend the council by saying, reconsider this same thing, but so that you give the council the opportunity and so that you save staff time and effort in simply, council, are you really willing to reconsider this for these reasons? And if so, could you give us some parameters? Anything, same price, lower price, staff negotiate as best as you can, whatever, and let them tell staff what to do. Your task is simply, as a commission, to recommend to them, or not recommend to them, that a master parks plan is a good idea for this community.
Especially with the Quimby.
Well, I was just gonna ask that question. Is that all right?
Go ahead.
Sorry, Rick.
Right.
We did receive a letter here talking about expediency and is that the Quimby portion that they're discussing, but the master plan maybe doesn't have as crucial of a time constraint? Can we take two separate motions or something and say, let's get this Quimby thing moving now, but let's, as Mr. Leclerc's recommending, ask the council to ask staff to give us a scaled version or redo the scope, something like that?
Well, have the council, I like what Charles has said, let the council decide whether to take all that time out of staff in redoing it or rescaling it or not by making the decision as to whether they're even willing to consider it. And if they're not willing to consider it, okay, then, we haven't done anything.
This is kind of why I was saying I wish this came in two separate agenda items so that we can get one done and then let's chew on this one a little bit. We're putting them together here. It's kind of muddying it up a bit.
Please, Robert.
So I think the question was also raised before the meeting started. Yes, it's highly recommended that there's a recommendation to adopt the ordinance even prior to having the master plan be adopted or a decision to start it. The reason why is that, yes, the Quimby is, it is by proxy somewhat connected to the master plan. And so the more time that separates the two, the higher the risk is that developers could contest their requirement to adhere to the Quimby ordinance. And so the more you can reduce that gap, the better off you will be. You reduce the risk.
Tom?
Okay, so as I understand it, then we have two ordinances we'd like to recommend to them, which seem to be all in agreement with. And we would attach to that recommendation that you need to expedite, or we suggest you expedite, getting this plan also in place because these ordinances depend upon it in order to be enforceable. Would that be correct?
Correct.
So how about a motion?
This is a big one, isn't it?
Well,
Two separate
nobody
motions.
says
We've
we
got two
can't have
ordinances.
two motions.
Yeah, let's do two.
So let's take one first.
So we recommend to the city council.
Oops, I'm
Go
sorry.
ahead.
I should have shut that down. I apologize, and it won't even shut down. That's the other part. Okay, it's off. Sorry about that.
Well, so to go through it, like I just said, ordinance number one would be that we recommend to city council that they adopt ordinance 2014-160 and repeal the county land use ordinance 460.152, as the verbiage is in front of us. And secondarily.
No, take them one at a time,
Okay.
because
That is the first
Bill was
recommendation. It's simple.
concerned about them. So let's take them one at a time. All right.
That's the
So
first one.
I need a second on that first ordinance.
Is that enough words to make it work?
I'll second the motion.
Okay, motion by Tom and seconded by Bill. Now, any discussion? Hearing none, I'd like to let's hear, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, do we need to have a roll call vote?
Yes, you do.
I'm sorry. Marguerite, please.
Yes. Commission Chair Marty Rosen,
Aye, yes.
Commission Vice Chair Bill Zimmerman,
Aye.
Commissioner Ken Gond, Commissioner Richard Croy,
Aye.
and Commissioner Tom Gidroy.
Aye.
Fine. Now let's go to the second one.
So on the second one, we recommend to city council adoption of ordinance 214-161 with the same verbiage attached to it, repealing the county land use.
But don't we want to have the city council decide whether or not to,
To discuss Quimby after the,
no, the Quimby, because
third
of
point.
Quimby, we're recommending that Quimby be approved and that city council approve the increase in Quimby. But in order to make it enforceable, we need a plan, a master plan,
so
and
I think if you look at as it's written here, the second part of this it's perfect. Recommend that the city council consider completion of a parks master plan for the city of Menifee to provide guidelines to developers and staff for dedication. It's all there. So that should be the motion.
that and a copy of the memo from the city attorney.
do you want to make that the motion?
Chair, if I can interject here, so it sounded like there was, the first motion and passage was on the first ordinance.
Correct.
It may be important to do a second motion, or I mean, a motion now for the second ordinance.
That's what I was doing.
And then after that's completed, do a motion for the second bullet point, which was intended to be the second action. So essentially 3 votes in total.
Right.
Okay, so the second motion as written, that the city council consider the completion of a parks master plan, et cetera?
No. The second motion is a recommendation to council to adopt ordinance 2014-161 and that is the mitigation ordinance.
Okay. Again, I need a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, I have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. We're going to go back to a roll call vote.
Commission Chair Marty Rosen,
Aye.
Commission Vice Chair Bill Zimmerman,
Aye.
Commissioner Ken Gaunt, Commissioner Richard Croy,
Aye.
and Commissioner Tom Gidroy.
Aye.
All right. Now for the third.
And the third recommendation to council is verbatim from this screen I'm looking at. Recommend the city council consider the completion of a parks master plan for the city of Menifee to provide guidelines to developers and staff for dedication and improvement of recreational public facilities when conditioned by the Quimby requirements. And to that, I would also like to enter, I see this says confidential, a memo from the city attorney explaining that to them.
Yeah, even though it's confidential, this can definitely be shared with the city council.
And all that you need in the ordinance is that letter to be shared rather than to be actually in the ordinance.
You mean in the staff report to the city council?
To the
Yes.
city council?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, we have then two ordinances, and each has, and then a third item, which is a recommendation.
And the recommendation is now that city council is going to decide whether they want to do this. That's really what it is. We're recommending that they do it, but
We could
it's up to
further
them.
recommend that staff give them some options as far as who they could get bids from, as you said.
No, I would recommend that the city council, I don't think it's their job to determine who to send it out to. It's the staff should send it out to whoever they recommend to handle it.
Just to clarify, the process of soliciting for the work has been completed. I believe there was a total of, if I'm not mistaken, 11 firms that bid on it. 4 were interviewed. 1 was recommended for contract award. If I understand the discussion from earlier, the recommendation may be to direct staff to present city council with maybe a few options. One is what they saw on June 4th, which was the full scope. And then maybe secondly, a pared down version of that that refines the process in case there is a concern about cost.
But I would recommend that staff explain to city council why we're sending it back, and the need that we see for trying to get this done as soon as possible.
Yes.
Okay? Again, I need a second?
I'm sorry, and for clarification, is the motion still as recommended here, plus the addition of entering the memo from the city attorney, or has it been changed?
It would include the memo from the city attorney.
But everything else as it's worded in this,
Everything else as it's worded in that paragraph.
okay.
And do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right?
Discussion before.
Discussion,
before-
yes.
Again, and maybe we need a substitute motion, and I understand Margarita is asking, is that really the motion? Because there was discussion about, and we heard Mr. Leclerc's suggestion as well to help with the recommendation that I had made regarding not bringing the exact same scope to the city council.
Giving them options.
And asking them to potentially consider a different scope of work or something that's pared down. So can we add something to the motion? Can I make a substitute motion that basically says this, but I want to include something along the lines of, maybe you guys help me with the wording, that the council also, or also consider
Alternatives?
sending this back to staff or directing staff to compose or draft a alternative scope that is, that might be, you know where I'm going, help me out.
Well, rather than say alternative, why
Add
not
another sentence.
say draft alternatives?
If I could make a recommendation, using the term scope would imply you'd have to rebid it, just to make that clear. If you change the scope, you have to rebid it.
Right.
Now, the upside of what process already of the process that already took place is that it was done as a request for proposals, which means the selection is based off of qualifications, not necessarily pricing alone. Okay, so it gives us some flexibility in the selection process. What I would recommend then is if the recommendation to City Council be that staff represent it with different tiers, meaning, and I know this wasn't part of the backup to the item, it was provided to you on the dais this evening, in that additional paperwork on page 39 of the proposal, and this was just from the vendor that was recommended. So I'll highlight something here is each vendor that participated in this process provided a task list and a price per task, okay? And they defined each task. And they are the same tasks from one vendor to the other.
Okay.
So that helps us break it down a little bit further. So we can present to City Council a task list for them to consider. And they can say, we want these tasks, we don't want those tasks, based off of recommendations from staff, what are the most important pieces? And they can,
Which would cut the cost if you cut the test.
if you cut certain tasks, it would cut the cost. That's absolutely true.
Which is why I suggested council direct staff to draft alternative, what do you want to call it?
Tiered bids, tiered pricing
Tiered
bids.
bids, how's that?
Right, and so if we just made the motion the way Commissioner Gidroyce did, it wouldn't include what we're talking about
Well,
right now.
that's why we're adding,
Well,
but
another-
first of all,
another
Tom
paragraph.
has to agree.
Oh, I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right, Bill. We just need to figure out the verbiage.
Yeah, we're adding the city attorney's letter to this, and we're also asking council to direct staff to draft alternative tiered bids.
Sounds good,
Is that okay?
sounds good.
Is that okay?
Yeah, the draft for council consideration, because.
Okay. Now,
Here.
with that, do I have a second?
Could we just have it read back to us so we don't, we're sure we haven't stepped.
I know,
over.
I tried to word it and I couldn't quite get it.
Okay, so the motion is as written, with the addition of including the memo from the city attorney, as well as having council send staff back to include alternative tiered bids.
Thank you. Do I now have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
Okay. And is there any further discussion?
Actually, it might have been my substitute motion.
It is your substitute,
So I
but if
can't
he
second.
agreed to
Yeah,
substitute
it's not
motion,
yours.
Okay.
then
so
you second it.
Tom will second.
Oh, okay,
Tom
I'll give
will
you the second.
second.
Thank you.
All
Good
right.
point.
Sorry.
Um,
Doing a little house
Is there any
cleaning.
further discussion? Hearing none. We're going to go back to a roll call vote.
Commission Chair Marty Rosen,
Yes.
Commission Vice Chair Bill Zimmerman,
Aye.
Commissioner Ken Gaunt, Commissioner Richard Croy,
Aye.
and Commissioner Tom Gidroyce.
Aye.
Amazing. All right. That brings us to discussion item 9.1. Park, trail, and landscape development standards. And Charles, thank you very much for your help.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good night.
Uh, 9.1, are you
Sure.
doing that?
Yes, brief staff report. So since the incorporation of the city, there's been several developers who approached the city over time, submitting applications for new subdivisions and seeking approval of tentative tract maps as final maps so they can begin building and selling homes. Unfortunately, when they've submitted those, they usually have asked for standards for which the city requires those facilities, the public facilities, that are typically conditioned with the developments to be built by. So what does that mean? That means how does a city prefer a center median to be constructed? What type of restroom facility fixtures does the city want within those public restrooms? What type of plant palette would the city prefer to see in parkways, as well as in the parks themselves? So those are questions that the city staff have had a hard time answering because there hasn't been anything on the books that has been adopted by the city and the city council. And so what happens most times is staff defers those developers to existing park standards from other agencies or existing landscape standards from other agencies. Some notable ones include County of Riverside Open Space, as well as City of Paris, City of Marietta, Temecula. All of those cities have their own set of standards. Many of them have borrowed from each other and refined based off of the needs of their city. Some cities are more sensitive to recent water quality control laws that have been passed, conservation laws that have been passed. So you'll find in one city they are very responsive to ensuring that the landscape and irrigation meets or provides drought-tolerant options, whereas other cities are less concerned with that because they may have a specific look they're going for within those green areas. So this gives the opportunity for the city to develop its own manual, which once completed, they can provide to developers coming in, or even prior to them submitting an application, they can provide so that the developers know what they're getting into. It helps the developer with budgeting their project and gives them very firm guidelines for building those public facilities. You also, by doing this, you also sort of head them off from providing an inferior product. You give them a foundation of amenities that are going to last, based off of staff's research, as well as based off of, in this case, the preferred landscape architect. A little bit about this person and this firm. This is the city's contract landscape architect. He currently, alongside myself and staff, do review park plans as well as landscape medians. Anything having to do with landscaping, he is involved in reviewing prior to permits being issued. So he's very familiar with the firm is very familiar with the city's process, understands the city's expectation and the specs that are being looked for. So the total amount of the contract to achieve this is $39,470. Because this is not just for parks, this is for right-of-ways as well. This cost is being split nearly evenly between community services and public works because the benefits serve both departments.
Are you saying that Public Works is also spending 39.4?
No, the cost is being split in half. So
The 39.4, the 40,000 roughly is being divided by two?
correct.
All right. I have no problem with this, except I question, here we were just before questioning the fact we were hitting city council with 220,000, and now we're about to add another 40. These standards do exist in the county. The county does have I don't know what they call it, park standards, rec standards. Can we not take one of those and use that? Obviously, it's free, and just modify those parts that don't apply to the city, but, apply to the county. The trail development standards are, they're terrific. That's county. The I'm fairly certain that an equivalent of this for parks also exists. I would have to call Scott Bangle and make sure, but I'd be willing to bet on it. And Robert was kind enough to give me the park standards but that exist by Valleywide. Okay? It's not a lot of money in the sense, it's just adding to the other one, and I don't know what to do about that. Gentlemen, what is your feelings?
I don't see anything wrong with telling them that this is a separate item and it's necessary. I was going to remind you that we did recommend the trail development standards a couple of meetings back to the city. I don't know if that got to the council, did it?
Not yet,
Okay,
This is it.
this is it.
yes.
So this would be incorporated into what Mr. Hoyt's company is going to do for the rest of the design standards, so trails.
Yeah,
would
but
stick
if you're gonna already use something that pre-exists,
Well, in that sense, we could tell the council we're saving the money. We're going to use the county standard for trails. We're just worried about the other aspects.
well, you can't actually completely use the trail because there are parts of it that don't apply. Then you have to modify it slightly. And Robert, I'm sure, is quite capable of doing that.
Okay. That raises a point I'd like to ask, and that is, who would actually be looking at these standards before the money is spent?
Well, the money is spent on a percentage of project completed, just like any vendor's contract is set up. But before the standards are adopted, both the Planning Commission and Park, Recreation, and Trails Commission would review them.
Okay.
Thank you, Marty. Just so we all know, we're talking about spending about $20,000 of,
Well, the city council won't see that. They'll see 40. The fact that Parks is only spending 20 and Works is spending 20 on the same thing will,
right, well, we're talking about spending $20,000 out of a certain budget. So can you update us, Mr. Lennox, as far as what kind of budget we have so far collected in diffs and all that kind of thing for Parks and Trails?
Sure. As of the beginning of this fiscal year, the park diff had a total of about $500,000. The trails diff had a total of about $300,000. To date, we've only expended about $106,000 of the parks diff. We have not touched the trails diff.
could you repeat that? How much of the Parks diff did we spend?
106, and that has been essentially through the various park improvements that myself and Alan have been completing.
So knowing that, I'm just going to throw in my perspective is this is something that's just like the Planning Commission and the council uses a general plan in order to make findings to say it's consistent with the general plan when they're approving projects. When we're looking at parks that come in, we need something to be able to make our findings as well and say it's consistent with this. So this is a tool that'll be used not only by us, but those who follow us in this role. So I think having 20,000 and share the other 20 with the engineering department's budget, it really isn't all that onerous, knowing that we've got $500,000 already ready to go for this type of thing. So
Well,
we need to
minus
build.
106, you got 400. Okay.
We need to build a foundation, and this is a great way to do it, in my opinion.
Rick?
I agree. Also, the statement was made, can we borrow from other things? Yes, we can certainly do that. The county standards on a lot of the stuff is very low, and I think this is a great opportunity to knock that standard way up and say, yes, they had theirs, here's ours. And I think it's a great idea.
So I'm gathering that the consensus is to go along with this. And with that, oh, I'm sorry.
That's me.
Oh,
Yeah.
Robert.
Just an additional piece of information, the figures that you may have heard in the past of $350,000 in diff available, that was simply the allocation that council made for the budget for this year. We essentially said to them, we would conservatively like you to give us a budget allocation of 350 from the park diff fund balance to spend this year. That's all that meant. It didn't mean that's what the true balance of the diff is. There's untapped diff money that's there, which is the 600,000 I was mentioning. Just to clarify.
If there is no further discussion, then I'm going to ask for a motion to approve.
I'll move.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay, Tom, second. All in favor? Oh, do we need a,
It's a recommendation.
Yeah, you can do a roll, you can do a regular,
okay.
all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That is approved. All right, 9.2.
Thank you, Chair Rosen. This item is for consideration of a letter of interest or intent to apply for the 2015 National Grant Program to assist with construction costs related to the development of the Central Park's Art Pavilion and Amphitheater through Art Place America. A little background, this organization is a national foundation who has a history of giving millions of dollars each year to agencies, nonprofits, school districts, and the like, focused on creating a better art environment for communities, either through programming, capital improvement, or educational efforts. And so the reason why it's coming to you is to get some consensus and direction on submitting the letter of intent with reference to two partners in particular. One is Regent Properties, and the second is Arts Council Menifee, to assist with the development as well as programming of the space once the asset has been built and installed. If you'll recall back a couple meetings ago, there was a review of the conceptual design of the Central Park site, and it incorporated, I want to say it was about 8,000 square feet, at least in that version of the conceptual, dedicated to what was labeled as a palm grove, but also through revisions with the city, been modified to incorporate an art pavilion, which included various niches and nodes and kiosks for displaying public art. This grant opportunity, the awards that are given on an annual basis range from $50,000 to $500,000. The LOI that staff's recommending be submitted would be initially an ask for the full amount to assist with the construction of that pavilion area and some of the amphitheater area to benefit artists in the community for public use.
Well, personally, I don't see any downside to this. And I would recommend that we just do that. We recommend that the grant program be, that they apply for it. We still have discussion? Yeah,
Yeah,
Rick.
I just want to, when you submit this, do you submit any architecturals or anything, or?
No, the letter of intent just gives a very general the overview of what's being proposed. Typically is a 1 or 2 page submittal. We may actually also submit a letter of support from the other two partners, because that typically the guidelines state that those collaborations and partnerships make for a more competitive application. So the LOI is first. Once they review that, that essentially helps them screen out all the candidates, all the applicants, and then they'll invite those that they feel are most competitive to submit a formal application.
I think the discussion during that meeting was that amphitheater. We want to make that amphitheater as nice as possible. We just don't want a concrete slab in the middle of a lawn.
Well, obviously, we're not going to be able to rely on the developer to do it.
No.
So we're going to have to get money from elsewhere, and this is a perfect place to do it. I mean, I recommend that we do it. Absolutely. Can we get a motion to approve?
I'll move, Mr. Chairman.
Very good. Then we need a second.
Second.
Seconded by Rick. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Approved unanimously. Let's go to 9.3. Regional Sports Complex Tour.
I'll go ahead and turn this over to, I'll start with Alan to go over the improvements that have been done so far.
Sports complexes?
Oh, I'm sorry. I was on the wrong one.
9.3?
I'm sorry. I was on the wrong one.
Our 3-hour tour.
Yes. Yes, this item is for consideration of a tour. This came up at the strategic planning meeting as well as a meeting thereafter. Commissioners had expressed interest in taking a look at what other facilities, regional sports facilities in other agencies, other cities have been constructed. So staff's assembled a short list, as you see in the staff report, of those that we can visit almost immediately. We have contacts with each of these agencies and can set up on-site walkthrough so you can see. The upside, too, is that I've worked at a couple of these myself and I can give you some additional background. The recommendation here is to set up a special meeting to conduct the tour. Details, essentially, we could depart from here in the city bus or meet commissioners there if needed. You just have to convene the meeting here first and then continue it off-site.
Well, I think that we really should go by bus together so that we can discuss it. And since it will be an actual meeting, we will be allowed to talk about it on the bus. I've just recently been told about a park complex that existed in Moreno Valley, which is magnificent. I went to see that one. Gorgeous.
Is that one of the ones on our list?
No, it's not even here, but I'm trying to think of what the name of that place was. It's between two high schools.
Is that the one on the list here?
It might be the same one, or
Which one?
if you have a little more
Moreno
description.
Valley
Community Park?
Rancho Rupa, no, it's something else. I'll have to look for the names, but they're gorgeous. I
Can you
mean, some of
Google
these
Moreno
things are
Valley
really
Community Park?
magnificent.
Mhm.
And they're not that far from us, you know, I think it took 35 minutes or something like that to get there. And once I give everybody the name, you can go yourself and just take a quick look. We need to set up something, and I think that we should rely on staff to put something together, choose some dates to give us so that we can choose a date that's convenient for everybody.
Can we just talk about that now?
Absolutely, go ahead.
When are we available?
Thanksgiving, no.
Yeah.
Christmas out. I'm good. I'll just get sick at work.
Can we all get time during the week? Is that,
I could make
are
time.
we available?
Yeah.
Okay.
I
think we're
almost
pretty
have something
flexible.
called retirement, you know, so, yes.
Lucky you.
But, yeah, I think we should just get, I don't know, 3, 4, something like that, possible dates, that the staff are available, and set up a program of doing this. And, you know, you can borrow the van or whatever.
Yeah, the city owns a van.
Yeah, so, and we go. So all that we need to do is wait on possible dates, and then you can email those dates to the 5 people.
We can email them. You'd have to reply independently.
Yeah.
But certainly, or if since you're all here now, I don't know if you have your calendars or not. If you don't, that's okay. We can do the email way as well. But staff is really at your disposal. We can do it any time that this group is available. So.
Well, I don't want to impose, but, you know, so I was thinking that perhaps you'd want to speak about what days might be better for you than others, you know, and we could certainly work around it. Is that okay with everyone?
Yeah.
And we'll
Either way,
just,
I'm prepared to make a date tonight. It doesn't make a difference.
well, if everybody has their calendar with them, do you?
I don't.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so just email the dates and we'll go from there.
Robert, were you thinking like next month or December or what? What do you have in mind? time
Well,
frame?
because it's a special meeting, it can be any date you want it to be, to provide a little more spacing for us, and it's just because we have the two other committees as well. Early November, like second week, maybe just after the elections would be helpful for us.
Sounds good.
Sounds good to me, too. Okay, let's go to number 10. Park improvement update. Now we go to Alan.
Yes.
Thank you, Chairman Rosen. I'll be presenting a brief update on our park and landscape improvements that we've done so far. Starting off with Audie Murphy Ranch Park, we reinvested $80,000, including hot coal receptacles, 2 park monument signs. We just recently received the first delivery of trash receptacles, new ones, new metal ones that we're going to be replacing the teak wood ones out at the park. We've also made improvements to the restroom, replacing residential wood doors with commercial metal doors, and replacing the paper hand towels with air dryers.
Well, point of clarification on this one. This is a prime example of why park development standards are so important. We had to basically reinvest $80,000 of the CFD money simply because there were no standards to follow. And so when this park got installed, it was installed with a mix of non-commercial, mostly residential quality products that had to be replaced.
Teak is very expensive, beautiful wood, but unfortunately, prone to destroying it, yeah. Go ahead, Alan. I'm sorry.
Next, we have slides, pictures from the Audie Murphy Ranch Skate Park warranty repairs. The first month we had very heavy use, and so we had the skateboard company come out, ramp company come out, and they made repairs over 4 days, I believe. So far, so good. Next, we have new city park signage. This project consisted of removing 15 county park signs, installing 21 new city park signs, and installation of 17 miscellaneous signs pertaining to dog park signs, athletic field rental signs, and park shelter rental signs. Next, we have Lyle Marsh Park planter renovation. This had 4 planters that we re-landscaped. There's a before and after picture. Currently, this project is about 90% completed. In the next 2 weeks, I'll be rescheduling the planter mulch. So far, we installed 2-rail vinyl fencing, point-to-point drip irrigation, DG pathways, and California drought-tolerant plants. We also, at this park, the booster irrigation pump failed. We installed with a new 7.5 horsepower booster pump motor. Since the old motor company doesn't exist anymore, we had to do some modifications to it. We had to install a new impeller sleeve to fit the new motor onto the pump. New O-rings and new seals were installed.
And so the importance of a booster pump in any park is to ensure the pressure is appropriate for the irrigation system. This is a fairly large open space area, and before the pump was in place, you could see signs of wear, burns, just not full coverage, and so this has allowed us to get back to full coverage.
Yeah, without the irrigation pump, I think the static pressure was 40 to 50 psi. With the pump now, we have 90 psi, so we have head-to-head coverage. Next, we have EL Pete Peterson planter renovation. This is a current project. Currently, we've only installed the 2-rail vinyl fencing. We will be installing point-to-point drip irrigation in the next 2 weeks, also with California drought-tolerant plants and planter mulch. This is a completed project. Senior Center, the HVAC replacement. Replaced the old non-operating original AC and heater unit, and this one is working right now, new one. Next, we have we've installed pet waste stations at all the parks. We just ordered 4 more units for the Paloma Wash Trail. We've also completed the automated magnetic restroom door locks at 3 of our parks, Audie Murphy Ranch, La Ladera, and E.L. Peterson. This is a completed project, Cherry Hills Boulevard Medium Improvements, Areas 1 and 2. Area 1 and 2 is right off of Cherry Hills Boulevard and Bradley. There's before and after pictures. Next, we have Cherry Hills Boulevard Median Improvements, Area 3. This project is going on right now. It should be completed in the next few days. This is at the corner of Cherry Hills Boulevard and Sun City Boulevard. This is a future project, playground resurfacing project, estimated budget at $125,000. Currently, the majority of our tot lots and playground structures have either sand or wood chips, and we're planning on retrofitting and installing rubberized playground surface, and it will be offset by a Cal Recycle tire-derived product grant of $13,000. This is a timeline of 2 projects at the Senior Center, interior and exterior. They're the tentative project schedules. The interior will have improvements to the restrooms, ADA improvements. Right now, it will start in November 2014 for the design and engineering, and the project should be completed by April 2015. For the exterior improvements, this is where we're going to be knocking down the exterior wall, improving, resurfacing the parking lot, and making improvements to the exterior of the building. This one is actually in environmental review right now and should be completed April 2015.
And I'll also note that on the interior project there's also included improvements to the banquet area and small stage that's inside, with curtains, lighting rigging, and AV equipment as well. So it can be used for multiple purposes.
Can you go back, please, Alan? Thanks. There's a lot to look at here.
Yes.
Now this only provides a timeline. It doesn't give you a list of all the improvements for each of them. We can certainly provide that as well. There was a summary provided with the CDBG report, and we can certainly duplicate and provide that to you as well, so you have more detail.
All right, thank you.
The remaining projects that are being worked on now or will be, we hope to start before the end of the fiscal year, picnic shelter replacement and painting. Some of this is being covered through the additional work contract with Valleywide, as repainting can typically be considered a routine maintenance task. But there are some picnic shelters that are in complete disrepair. I know of one in particular at E.L. Peterson Park that has seen better days. Playground resurfacing that Alan mentioned, tree planting. Through a grant we have, a Cal Fire forestry grant. It does provide a certain number of trees to plant, as well as an educational piece and free trees to give away to the public. So we're looking forward to doing that in the near future. Park monument sign rebranding. Since the city decided to have its own community services department and oversight of the maintenance directly, we noticed that many of the old signs that were once county don't have any branding on them at all. They just have simply a park name, or they may have even remnants of county. So we are looking to rebrand those to city. Trail improvements, as Alan mentioned, we started along La Paloma with some pet waste stations. We'll also be looking to install trail markers where needed, as well as additional pet waste stations throughout. Part of that process includes really just recording all the trails that do exist in the city, which we've begun. It does take a little bit of time, so Alan and I and Margarita have our walking shoes.
You have the report.
We do.
I'll show you where it is.
We do. Let's see, park furnishing replacement. As we mentioned at Audie Murphy Park, we did receive the first shipment of trash cans. We're waiting on benches, which should come tomorrow. The standard for those is what we would incorporate into the set of standards, but we'll be looking to purchase replacement furnishings for all the other parks that have trash cans and benches that are in disrepair. Irrigation renovations. Lyle Marsh was not the only park that has some challenges. There are some other ones. E.L. Peterson, I believe, is in need of a new, of a booster pump, if I'm not mistaken, Alan.
Lazy Creek.
Lazy Creek, there you go. So there are significant irrigation improvements needed across. Newport Road, right-of-way, and the AMR Park pedestrian pathways. We just met yesterday with the developer and have negotiated some opportunity for them to help improve along the Newport parking strip now. It's become a parking strip. So that way when folks get out of their vehicles, they're not continually trampling on the vegetation that's been installed. So in the near future, you'll see that transitioned into a mix of DG and some more appropriate vegetation. Let's see, parking lot resurfacing and restriping. If you go to any one of the old parks, you'll notice that a lot of the parking lots, striping is completely gone, asphalt is cracking. This is just a long overdue item, so this is going to be on our radar as well. Sports court resurfacing, same exact issue. They're just old and they need some attention. And then Lazy Creek Recreation Center exterior improvements. That particular facility was once an HOA building. It was not constructed with the intent of being a public community center. And so there's some exterior improvements, things having to do with the roof, trusses, that just need attention. Really old, need new treatment. So we'll be looking to do those too. And then various fencing and tot lot repair. We see on a regular basis, tot lots in particular get heavy use by all ages, regardless of what's posted. And so we'll be looking to replace a lot of those smaller pieces of equipment, although they tend to be pretty expensive. So
I got a question on the resurfacing, the rubberized surfaces in the playground area and stuff. You were saying that that's like $125,000. What can you give us a little education as to why it's so expensive? I mean, what is the process there?
Yes, a lot of it goes to labor costs. The wood chips and the sand, you have to remove that, put in a road 2 base or cement or asphalt, level it, and then the top 2 layers are virgin plastic, so that's the expensive part. The Cal Recycle grant pays for the 3rd level material, which is recycled tire, and so it's just a lot of it's just labor cost.
You have to remove the playground structure and then replace it?
No, you can. It's pour in place.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay, can we add at some future time some information on ADA requirements in parks?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay?
Is there,
I know that even in the county, we have, trails are now subject to ADA modifications, okay? I think it might be helpful if we get somebody in here who can talk to us about ADA requirements,
sure.
okay, at some future time. Okay, 10.2, events and activities. Alan?
Yeah, Alan.
Yes. The next upcoming city events that we have are this Saturday, October 25th, from 4 o'clock to 8 p.m. is the Halloween extravaganza at Lazy Creek Park. Next, we have Saturday, November 8th, from 8 to 10 a.m. We're going to have the Menifee Veterans Memorial 5K, 1K run at Wheatfield Park, beginning at Wheatfield, going up Bell Mountain, and finishing at Wheatfield Park. On Tuesday, November 11th, from 11 a.m. to 12 noon, we're going to have a small, intimate Veterans Day ceremony at the Menifee Veterans Memorial at Wheatfield Park. On Friday, December 5th, from 4:30 to 7:30 p.m., we'll have our holiday tree lighting event at the Great Oak Tree Roundabout on Menifee Town Center Drive. And on Saturday, December 6th, from 8 a.m. to 12 noon, we'll have Breakfast with Santa at the Senior Center.
To give you a little more background on the tree lighting event, you may recall traditionally that's been held here at City Hall. We've been successful in discussing with Regent Properties the opportunity to use that new roundabout. The commitment made by them is that they will complete all of the right-of-way landscape improvements from Newport all the way over to the center roundabout, so it's nice and pretty. ensure that all of the electricity, street lighting is active, energized, as well as the monument signs. And then we'll be able to decorate and light that center tree as well as the light poles. The event itself is intended to incorporate community entertainment, a snow play area for kids. Possibly, we're still considering a public movie on our big movie screen. And I'm sure I'm missing something else. I think arts and crafts for kids, a few other things, vendors as well. So that's exciting that we get to expand upon that event and move it to what we hope will be its final resting place at that roundabout tree.
Is that the end of city events? Because I notice Friday's event is missing.
It's not a city event, but
Isn't the city combining
Rotary.
with Rotary to do the mayor's ball?
No, the city actually only purchases a table. So in essence, we are a very small sponsor in it.
Okay. All right. Would it be possible for you to email to the commission all the events? Yeah, okay, so that
Yes.
we have them. Okay, commissioner comments. Are there any further comments by anyone?
I'd just like to ask a little bit more about the warranty on the skate park. You said so far so good. How long do we have a warranty for? What's the cost when that is no longer in place? Okay.
Yeah, typically there's a 1-year warranty on construction, so that'd be labor and materials. After the 1 year, though, we're pretty much on our own. Yeah. However, if it's as we've been told by the manufacturer, is if the defect that's experienced even after the 1 year is pretty clearly a design or installation problem, they'll come and honor that. We just there's a process for that. Just the same way we contacted them for this, we do the same thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
in reference to something we just talked about on these improvements, I was going to ask, I've been visiting a few of our parks and park facilities, and some of the larger ones, and just a couple of days ago, I was over at the Lyle Marsh Park, and I was watching this soccer game. And one big problem we have there, and it's a beautiful park, and this new improvements are great, but there's no restroom facilities, with the exception of porta potties. And the same thing exists at Lazy Creek Park, which we talked about. Is there any plans in the future of adding restroom facilities like they have at La Ladera and so many of the other parks?
That's a great question. The list that was on the screen was things that we were targeting only through the end of this year. That particular project is on our horizon, and we intend to include it in next year's CIP, the formal CIP. To give you a cost estimate, a prefab restroom can run about $350,000 per, and so it would certainly have to just be on a CIP list until we secure funding for it over time. The park diff fees, mitigation fees could go toward that if there is a nexus between where the subdivision occurs and the park in question, so that could be a little harder. But the other park diff fees that are part of the diff study that's going on now can be used toward that. So we will see a significant increase in the diff fees that we collect as soon as the study is final.
Anyone else? All right, how about future agenda requests? Anybody wish to add anything? I already asked about the ADA requirements. Anyone else? Okay, in that case, I look for a motion to adjourn.
Did we talk about these items?
Well,
Large
we're not
animals?
talking, those are items on future agenda,
What did we talk about?
Exactly.
Just there, okay.
and they will be gradually put in as we, have space. But if there's any additional, we'll add. Okay. Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
All right.
We are adjourned.